Drone Vlog number 9.
Hey everybody, it's Adam
and Jay
here in the AeroWorks Productions workshop, and big news today in case you haven't heard of it, yesterday actually, the FAA finally released Part 107, the UAS ruling.
Sweet! I'm ready to fly. See ya, right?
Whoa, wait a second. Where are you going?
Well, it's 107, I can go fly now.
Nah, not exactly. So
whoa.
that's what we're going to talk about a little bit about today. So, there's a little bit that goes into any kind of pilot training. As you can see, we've got some materials here from the old private pilot days. And so we want to stress that, don't take the UAS pilot training or pilot test lightly, that it's an actual test, and it's actually proctored in a very structured environment. Typically with private pilot and higher exams, you have an FAA approved testing center, and you're given a 2-hour time period. You're given 2 sheets of paper and a pencil, and it's very monitored, and you have 2 hours to complete the test. So make sure that when you do go to take that test, you're prepared for it. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's in the 107 and just some of the questions that are popping up online and everywhere else about what you can and can't do now with the 107.
You can't take the test online, right?
Well, and that's something that's come up. A lot of people have posted the online FAA site that has a lot of the courses for like the Wings program and that. There is now a UAS Operators Course that's online. Matter of fact, we took it today.
Did.
And it was a lot of great information there. Hats off to the FAA. They did actually put together something that is relevant to actually operating UAS.
And it was more than 10 questions. Everybody said it was just going to be a 10-question...
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought, well, how many propellers does a quadcopter have? A, 1, 2, No, it's actually got some good information. We're going to cover some of those topics, but the big question is, a lot of people are posting that is the test. That is not the test. For people who are not already Part 61 pilots, so if you don't already have a sport pilot or private pilot or higher license, you will still have to go to an FAA testing center and take an actual exam. Now, if you're already an exempted pilot, meaning you have an exemption or you have a private pilot or one of the licenses that count, you can take that course and take the actual awarded certificate along with the application for the new UAS operator's license, and there's some steps in there that you have to do, but that will suffice for your test. But the big thing is, a little bit of the misconception is that if you go online and take that course, you're done and you're ready to go, and that's not the case unless you're already a pilot.
That's right. Yeah, so you're also going to have to be TSA...
The background check.
A background check done, so I guess just not everybody's going to be able to do that.
And that's something that came out after 9/11, actually. Even in regular flight training, once 9/11 happened, they had to have a way to kind of validate and vet new pilots coming into the U.S. that may not be U.S. citizens. So they required things like a birth certificate and that. I don't know exactly what the TSA is going to require. You've done some traveling international. Maybe it's similar to the pre-boarding pass that you can get through the TSA for flying international. But that will be part both for the certificated pilots and those that are seeking the new commercial UAS operator license. You will have to have some type of TSA background check along with the application, which is going to be made available online as well as a paper version if you like to do stamps and that. But most people will go the online route, both with the application. For Part 61 or already licensed pilots, you can simply do the course that a lot of people have been posting. If you're not already a pilot, you'll have to go ahead and take an exam at an FAA testing center. And those are all over the U.S. You can look that up on the FAA website. We'll put links down below to all of these sites and links and courses and everything, including the new AeroWorks site. We're going to be having a course that will help you kind of navigate some of those topics in case you don't want to go out and pay for full-on ground instruction.
So what's going to be some of the stuff that you think is going to be on the test that we already kind of looked at today for Part 61?
Well, I think we've got some of the topics here. Obviously, you're going to want to know your aircraft. They're going to want to know the limitations of your aircraft. So a lot of people just say, well, I've got a battery, it should fly for 20 minutes, that's my limitations. Well, you need to know things like environmental limitations, like the weather. If you're living out in Denver, Colorado in a high density altitude, your props are not as efficient, your battery's not going to last as long.
So you won't get the 20-minute
Right, you're not going to get the 20-minute flight time. You might not be able to lift as much weight. So if you're carrying, if we have a big octocopter that carries a DSL and we're at a DSLR and we're carrying that at sea level, it's going to be different for somebody that's working at a high altitude. So these are some of the things that both the course and the online test cover. Things like airspace, weather. They talk a lot about safety, things like lost link and flyaway type scenarios, what you have to do, emergency procedures. They've integrated now a checklist as part of that, as well as a maintenance program. So we recommend, and we're going to put some links to that down below too, that you start keeping either a written logbook. There are some companies that are popping up that do the cloud-based service, but again, you got to pay for that. And what if they go out of business? You can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned notebook. Keep a notebook that logs both the date you're flying, which aircraft you're flying, the weather conditions, your flight time, anything else that you want to add to that is going to act as your logbook.
Because the FAA could come out anytime you're flying, trying to make money, and ask for you to have some kind of proof.
Exactly right, and no different than flying a Cessna. If you get what's called a ramp check, and some guys go their whole career, 60 years of flying, never have a ramp check. I actually got a ramp check the first 30 days I had a pilot's license. I was out in the middle of nowhere at an uncontrolled, untowered airport flying with a buddy. We had just landed. We were sitting there talking. It was a beautiful sunny day, and here comes a little Ford Explorer pulling up. And 2 hours later, we got done with that ramp check. And they can ask for everything. They ask for the pilot, your logbook. They can't require your logbook to be in your possession, but your pilot's license has to be there. Your medical, the aircraft logbooks, anything else they want to ask you, basically you have to provide to them, and they can keep you there as long as they want. So now that the UAS are being essentially considered aircraft and are Part 107, they have the ability, and you have to provide either an actual physical copy or via electronic copy. So you could have all your documents stored on Dropbox or something, but they have to be able to see that you are keeping a logbook and maintenance records and all your certifications and anything that are things that are required to have your new license.
And probably even more so now, your FAA number, the registration number, better be on there.
Yep, and they do now. You remember when they did the hobbyist registration, they said that you could put that inside as long as it was obtainable. That was fine. They've kind of worded it a little bit differently now, and they said that it must be in a, I can't remember the exact wording, but it has to be visible and easily identifiable.
Without tools. You have to be able to get to it without tools.
So would you get in trouble if it was in the battery bay? Probably not, because you can pull the battery out. But for the most part, they're going to want to look at the aircraft and see the registration number, and that's whether that's your N number or your FA blah 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 number. They're going to want to see that on the aircraft.
Right. So what does this mean for us being 333 exempt?
That's another question. Does that mean the exemption process just goes away? What if you filed 2 weeks ago? Does that mean oh man, I've been waiting 2 weeks or 6 months and you haven't got it yet? The exemption process is still moving. It's still there. And if you have an exemption, there's actually a line, and we'll post that on the screen, that says you can continue currently operating under your exemption until it expires or until you go the 107 route. Now, there are still going to be flight operations that are going to still require an exemption.
And we've run into that.
Yeah, things, people are wanting to fly at night for roof inspections, or maybe over people, or over, certain scenarios where things that are not covered in the 107, the exemption process, or they're actually calling it something slightly different now. I can't remember the exact verbiage they use, but there's the exemption process, there's the waiver process. So they have a waiver process now. And it sounds like that's all going to be online, which is great. There won't be a written, you won't have to mail in things. You can do it online. And if they find that the operations that you're asking to be waived from can be done safely, then they'll grant that waiver.
Limitations. What are some of the limitations to the 107 that we're going to have now?
Well, we've got, most of them are pretty close to what we've been operating under. 400 feet or less AGL. They did add in there, though, that now you can fly up to 400 feet AGL, but then if you're operating off of or above a structure, you can be 400 feet above that. So let's say you're doing an oil rig inspection that happens to be 400 feet, or maybe a tower of some kind. You could technically be 400 feet above the top of that. Some of the other things, they're allowing some operations from moving vehicles, but in a very sparsely populated area. I don't know how many people are really driving in a car and operating.
Yeah, maybe in Wyoming
or maybe in filming in desert, in the Death Valley or something like that. I suppose that's an operation. The biggest change, I think, is going to be the airspace requirements, because under an exemption, you currently cannot fly within 5 miles of an airport unless you have a special COA. The new procedure says that you can operate in all the classes except for Class A airspace, but you have to have prior notification. So you can't just blast off and call them and say, hey, we're going to be flying here. You actually have to do what we do as pilots, which is request permission to fly in that airspace, and the aircraft, or excuse me, the ATC does not have to grant that either. I mean, if they feel that their workload is such that they've got 10 airplanes in the pattern and you want to blast off with a UAS a mile away, they can say denied, and you have to deal with that. So what they do recommend is that you call the tower if you are going to be operating in any kind of Class B, C, D, or E airspace as soon as you know you're going to be flying, so that you have enough time to give the tower time to fit you in somewhere. And keep in mind that this whole process just came out yesterday. It's not even official until 60 days from when it's posted, which is roughly the end of August.
Right.
And we know working with the exemption process for 2 years, there's people in towers that still don't know how that process works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't be surprised that you call up and say, hey, I've got a UAS operator's license, I want to go fly. And they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, so
we want to talk to you further on this, but we're busy right now. We had that too.
Exactly. So you need to be aware that you may get some pushback from some towers. We've had towers that are not even really that busy of a tower totally deny a special COA, and then we've had towers that are really busy airports that approved it in a few days. So it all depends on who you talk to, and we do know that there are some FAA ATC facilities that they take your exemption request and they put it in what we call the round file, which is that can sitting on the ground, because they just don't even want to deal with it, so they ignore it essentially. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully some of this will make things easier.
And for people who aren't pilots, like me, Adam is a pilot, I'm not. ATC is air traffic controller. He keeps all these abbreviations. I'm learning them myself, but it's air traffic controller. Is ATC is what you need to get permission from. Yeah,
and you know, some of the other things that they're talking about, they have some cloud clearances requirements, and let me see that the 107 there. We printed a copy off. We'll put links to these down below so you can print them off yourself. 3 miles, obviously, visibility, that's pretty common sense. We're not going to be out flying drones when it's raining and storming out anyway, but 3 mile visibility means you need to be able to see at least 3 miles away. 500 foot below a cloud, so don't be posting your videos of how you were doing above cloud flying, because that meant you had to get through that cloud somehow. And then 2,000 foot horizontal, similar to what regular aircraft do when they're flying VFR or visual flight rules. The 100 mile an hour max speed, I think that's pretty doable, unless you're flying a gas-powered fixed wing or something like that.
Right.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
And just to let you know that some of the questions on the test are going to refer to fixed wings, because there are drones, which are really drones, that are fixed wings.
Right.
So you have to know a little bit about.
There was some questions about load factors.
Right.
So you know, when you're flying straight and level, the forces are essentially equal: gravity and lift and thrust and drag. But when you bank an aircraft, you're putting a load on there, so be prepared. There's going to be some questions on it. This isn't going to be just a
willy-nilly,
like you said, a 10-question test. I mean, the typical FAA private exam is 60 questions, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you only have 2 hours to do it, and some of those questions are not just simple question and answer, they're actually require you to pull out the supplement and look at charts and weather things and figure out distances and things like that. Be prepared that this may be something you have to kind of brush up on, or if you don't have any knowledge, I'm sure we're going to see some study guides coming out, you know, including us. We're going to add some new study things to our Academy site. But there are, at least for aviation or fixed wing or, you know, full-size aircraft, there are study guides available out there now to get your exam passed, and I'm sure we're going to see that written documentation, online courses and things to help you get through the new FAA UAS.
And I'm actually glad to see that the FAA did do actually a pretty good job on this. Yep. You know, I thought it was just going to be here, you know, what, like you said, what is a quad? And it's going to be pretty good. So if you can pass the test, then you have a pretty good feel for what's going on with your equipment and what you're going to be coming into in the new world of driving.
I think it brings some awareness to things that you may not think about. I think, you know, when we think of, what's the performance of it? Let's say a quadcopter. You think, well, I've got a 20-minute battery. That's my performance. But there are things like wind. A lot of times we're operating around buildings because we're taking photos or video of a company or something, and it covers things like updrafts and downdrafts and weather and wind and obstacles and battery safety. There's a lot of things that, if you're new to the industry or new to the hobby, batteries are we all use lipos or lithium batteries. They can be very dangerous if they're handled improperly. Things like overheating them or storing them in a hot car, damaging them. Maybe you just dropped it really quick and you're in a rush to get that shot and you slap it back in and now you got a crack in it and it overheats. You could have an in-flight fire. There's a lot of things you need to be aware of when it comes to battery safety, and that's covered and it is on part of the test. So we're excited about 107. I think it's going to free up some opportunities for people who have been wanting to get into the commercial UAS space. One other misconception that we see a lot is, hey, 107's out, I don't need a pilot's license. Well, yes and no. You don't need a pilot's license like a full size, but you do need a UAS license. So be prepared that you're still going to have to take that exam and get that passed and go through some of the other background checks and things.
And just because you get the license doesn't mean that you're going to just be able to go out there and get the work and get the jobs and start flying and making money.
Yeah.
We've come to find out that places require a lot of insurance.
Right.
And they want you to keep your records. We keep a binder with all of our paperwork in from each flight that we make because they want to be able to go back and see, and we have to all kinds of information that we have to keep on there. So just because you get the 107 and get your license doesn't mean you're going to go out tomorrow and start making money, because when people start asking for information and insurance and all this stuff, you may be just shocked.
Right. Yeah, your best bet, if you're brand new and you just bought a drone today and you're trying to get that commercial because you want to take real estate photos or whatever. And by the way, as far as real estate goes, there's still limitations on non-participating people and distances and things you need to be aware of. But yeah, like Jay said, you're not going to run out and get a job with a Fortune 500 company most likely because they want to see what have you done, what's your experience. They want to see insurance. I mean, kind of the rule of thumb right now with UAS insurance is for every $1 million of coverage you have, it's about $1,000. We have a company that requires $10 million of insurance. That's about 10 grand a year for one drone, and it doesn't matter if it's a Phantom 4 or a 50-pound gas aircraft.
And it doesn't cover the drone if it breaks.
Right. And that just covers if you crash into a glass building and break 3 panes of glass, it's covered. It doesn't even cover this. So that's what's going to keep the really high-end professional companies continue to do what they already are doing because they have a lot of that stuff in place. Now, as you build up your clientele and you prove that you have a demo reel or samples of whatever industry you're going to get in, then you'll get those jobs. You'll get that, you'll have the more money to make. You'll make more money to buy the higher dollar insurance to get the bigger clients, and you just work your way up. But
and bigger equipment,
bigger equipment, and you kind of have to adapt. A lot of people get stuck on a particular brand. Like, is DJI the best? Is Unique the best? No one of them are really the best.
It's what works for you.
We buy and use all different kinds because one aircraft is better suited for indoor flying. One aircraft is better suited for carrying a particular type of camera.
Or inspections close.
Or zooming in on it for inspections, or staying in the air longer. We just, if you watch our Facebook feed, we just added a gas-powered helicopter. That'll stay in the air 2 hours. So no one brand is going to fit everything. I mean, some do a lot of it really good, but no one will do everything. So kind of pick the industry you want to get into, and then find the aircraft that's going to be best suited for that industry. So if you're into filmmaking, you may want to get a certain kind of camera. If you're into mapping, a lot of drones do that now. There are some companies that Unique is somewhat limited on some of the autonomous mapping features. I know the Typhoon H has some, but they're not as open as the DJI product. So you want to make sure that you don't just focus on the brand, you focus on what you plan to do with it, and then find the best copter for your industry. And if you have questions about that, you can email us down below or comment down below. We'll try and answer the questions. Tell us what industry you're interested in. And we'll put links to all those things down below.
We might have some information. I know the last job we just did, we had to go on site and actually fly for them and do certain maneuvers so they could see that we were real pilots and we could do it once we did, we're fine. But be prepared. They're going to ask you a lot of questions and try not to stumble on it, because as soon as you start stumbling, they're going to start thinking, wait a minute.
Maybe we shouldn't go with this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So just make sure you really do your homework, and when you're ready to go.
Yeah. So bullet points, guys. 107 came out, what, June 21st?
Yep, yesterday.
Yesterday, which is yesterday. And probably won't be fully in effect until the end of August. They said 60 days, but it could still be longer. They still have to develop, unless that test is already 100% done, they have to make sure it's done. They have to make sure that all the testing centers are up to speed and know how to implement the test. I'm sure there's going to be course study material available. So we hope to see it in 60 days, but it could be longer.
Yeah.
But 107 does allow for people to operate commercially without buying or going out and getting a full-size aircraft license, which can cost $3,000 to $50,000 depending on what you're getting licensed for. So that's going to be a big benefit. I think they said $120 for the test.
$150, I heard. $150 or somewhere
less
in there,
which is pretty in line with what all aviation tests run. And that, again, that goes directly to the FAA for implementing the test. So $150 or less test. Pass the TSA background check. Go to a testing center, take the test, and pass that, and submit all that paperwork. And hopefully, within 30 days or so, you'll get a card in the mail saying that you are a UAS operator. I believe they do issue you a temporary card. So if you're working, you can go ahead and start doing that if you passed everything.
And I know a lot of people think that, we're against the Part 107. We're not. We think it's a great thing. We just wanted to get the misinformation, because everybody's like, 107's here, we can just go fly. That's not the case. Listen, the 107 is going to help a lot of people that we've gotten a lot of questions from on Facebook and through YouTube and the information page. So
and the FAA, we're not, the FAA is there really to keep the sky safe. In the U.S., we have more aircraft flying around every single day, every minute than anywhere else in the world. And it's not a bad thing that they're making anybody go through training, or at least be aware of how to talk on a radio, how to talk to the air traffic control, knowing some basics about weather. Obviously, we're not going to be flying in a rainstorm in this kind of an aircraft, but you need to know about the density, altitude, and the winds and things like that. So these are all positive things.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, if you do want to go out and make money, now there's a pathway to do it. You're looking at $150 or less for the initial course. I believe you do have to test somehow every 2 years. I don't know if that'll be. I don't know if it'll be $150 every 2 years. I think you'll just have to be doing some recurrency training, probably like an online recurrency. But pretty smooth pathway, and we're looking at 30 to 60 days out on that. So
I know Adam was just showing me for his pilot's license that he goes on and takes like these little quizzes and reads these things and takes the test, and then when he goes in to get his recertification, then he doesn't have to do a lot of the stuff there because he already did it throughout the year. So it makes it a lot easier. So hopefully they'll do something like that, so you'll be able to just keep up on the. I'm sure it's going to be ever changing from year. This year and 2 years from now.
It's similar to any industry that has continuing education credits. Things change. When I first got my pilot's license, started flying back in the 90s, there was no glass cockpits. There was no GPS, really. Everything was the old round gauges or steam gauges. So as things change over time, even pilots that fly regularly still need to keep up with things, and it's good to go online and take, if you're a member of ALPA or like the FAA site, there's a lot of free courses on there that cover everything. And, take them, and a lot of them count towards continuing and keeping your license up to date. And at least, with an FAA license, it looks like the UAS license as well, but with a private pilot or higher license, every 2 years you have to essentially get rechecked out. And part of that is a ground portion where an examiner would ask you questions that may relate to basic things, to new things. And then the second portion of that is what they call the practical exam. And that's where you go up and you fly your aircraft and demonstrate that you can still do it safely. So by doing the online quizzes and courses throughout the year, you eliminate that portion of having to sit down for an hour or 2 hours and get quizzed verbally by somebody that maybe, you may not know every single answer and it's a little nerve-wracking. You can get that done online and come in and say, look, I've done my 3 credits of groundwork. I'm ready to do the flying portion. Now, I don't know if they're going to, it doesn't look like we have any practical exam for the drones. There's nobody that's going to be making you, show me how you can hover a UAS. But that may come in the future. But right now, it's just the written exam. But I'm assuming that probably over the 2 years course of your, having that license the first time, there'll probably be some upkeep to that, and taking those courses will do that.
We even talked to a friend of ours that's in the piloting industry, and he will do some of the testing, and they don't even know what to expect yet, because it's just brand new. So it's going to be a learning curve for everybody, especially for the first 2 years, and then hopefully it'll get easier and quicker and more streamlined down the line.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We're going to have all the links and any information that we talked about in links down below. Make sure you like and subscribe, that little button down there.
Over there.
And thanks for tuning in. And until next time, over and out.
Fly safe.
Fly safe.